let's check out what does he have to tell us, and also if he's gonna confirm or deny some of the things that I also thought about after watching the trailer. So as you can see, exclusive Elden Ring director answers all of our Shadow of the Earth Tree DLC questions. This is our beautiful, beautiful Hidetaki Miyazaki. So let's see what our guy has to say. So first question is, can you set the stage for us with Shadow of the Earth Tree? Where is it taking place? And can you speak kind of generally regarding what the story is going to be about? It's kind of funny to ask this question about what the story is going to be about, because, well, Elden Ring is a very... even though it has a linear story and how you go through, the lore itself is kind of hidden through the game, which is what From Software is really known about. So asking about the story itself is a bit dodgy, but maybe the direction is there. So what did he say? Hidetaka Miyazaki, director. First of all, the setting of Shadow of the Earth Tree is a brand new land. It's a brand new map separate from the lands between. It is a land that is overshadowed by the particular Shadow of the Earth Tree as opposed to the Earth Tree in the lands between. And it takes place again on an entirely separate, physically separate map. So it will involve a warp of some sorts to get there. In terms of setting and teams, it technically occupies the same space as the lands between, the same universe. But due to something story related that we won't review today, it has become physically disconnected. And you will travel to the Shadow of the Earth Tree land as a separate place. So this Land of Shadow itself is a place the player will visit to walk in the steps of Miquella. Miquella is a key part of the story this time, perhaps as guessed by many players who saw the art that was released previously. Yeah, that is in fact Miquella, and it is he who traveled to the lands of the Shadow, and it's the players who will be tracing his path and following in his footsteps, trying to see what he's going to do there. Another axis of the story is Queen Marika and what she did in the Land of Shadow and what led Miquella to follow her there. Oh, so maybe the guy is actually Queen Marika's son. Could be. Could be. Maybe it's like in a past thing. Speaking of this new land that we are traveling to, how is it structured? Is it structured in a very much the same way as the lands between, where there are legacy dungeons and minor dungeons? Can you describe a little bit about how the world is going to be compared to the base game? Yes, we think players can expect a similar experience to what they had with the base game. This is going to be structured in a similar way, as you said, with open field maps, with large-scale legacy dungeons, and with small to medium-scale legacies as well. So we hope players will enjoy the same sense of scale and sense of adventure throughout that structure. Can you approximate the size of the world compared to the world in the base game? It's hard to answer without giving away too much and to a high degree of accuracy, but if you think in terms of scale and size, it's probably comparable, if not larger, than the area of Limgrave from the base game. So the question now stands is the Whipping Peninsula actually a part of it? Or is it going to be just this part here, which is also not small at all. Limgrave was very big, and I remember spending a lot of time in Limgrave on my first playthrough. So if the DLC is to be the size of just Limgrave, this area here, not the Whipping Peninsula as well, I think this is actually a pretty well-sized DLC. You mentioned Miquella earlier. That's a character that I know fans have had a lot of questions about. Is there anything specifically you can tell us about the role this character will play in the DLC? And I know the trailer opens with a shot of Mog's boss arena with the hand hanging out of the cocoon. We will learn about what Mog did to him. Yes, the cocoon and arm you saw at the beginning of the trailer, this is actually the point of entry to the Land of Shadow, where the player will enter the DLC area. I think that's also a pretty good point, because to get to Mog, you have to be quite strong. It's an area that has pretty strong enemies, and Mog itself is not an easy boss. So I think that's actually a pretty good starting point for the DLC, and we can also probably expect the DLC enemies to be quite strong as well. And this does have some relation to Miquella, and Miquella has, as we said, traveled to the Land of Shadow. He does have some motive and some objective there, which we don't want to give away too much. But essentially, the player will be following in those footsteps in the same way that they follow the blessings from the grace. The sites of grace, okay. I see, so there is also going to be like a trail that's going to guide you. The sites of grace and lands between. They will be following Miquella footsteps, and these will guide them through the land of shadow and reveal that motivation to them. And of course, the player is not the only one who's curious about Miquella. There are several characters in the world and NPCs who have been following Miquella as well, and the player will encounter them on their journey in the land of shadow, and they will make new friends and enemies, we hope. There were a lot of striking bosses and enemies that were revealed in this trailer, and I was wondering if we could just go through a handful of them one by one, and you can either explain who or what they are, tell us an anecdote about their design or anything you want, and I'm going to do my best to describe them because I don't know the names of them. First of all, there's like a giant basket of flaming kindling. That's the one I call the brazier. Okay, so this giant basket of flame, as you so eloquently put it, Mitchell, was a terrible weapon you used in a war that occurred in the land of shadow, basically. So again, without saying too much, we can't give away the name just yet. It was a really gruesome weapon that was used. And the kindling that you see is actually the remains of bodies that were put in there to burn. Wow, so there's that friendly fellow. Jesus. And then there's an absolutely terrifying worm with ants that eats people whole. It's hard to talk about some of the enemies without spoiling anything. Hopefully you understand. But there's a significant connection between these enemies, the way they are, and the land of shadow. So that's the guy that sent shivers down my spine. Okay, I'm just going to skip to the last one if it's okay. But what can you tell me about the man in red with snakes and flames? That's kind of like the focal point of this DLC trailer. Yes, we can speak to this character a little bit. Awesome. This is, as you say, a key figure of this DLC. We believe he will be officially revealed to be Mesmer by the time the trailer goes live. And yes, he's a key figure in the DLC, and he again has this important element of shadow to him, which is a key theme through the DLC as well. As you may have seen at the end of the trailer, there was this piece of key art where it shows Mesmer sat in this throne-like chair, and people who play the game may recognize this throne to be one of those from the boss room where you battle Morgoth. So he is one of the Elden Lords, right? And this represents the thrones at the base of the Earth Tree, and it's supposed to symbolize that Mesmer stands on equal footing to these other demigods and children of America who sat around in these thrones and held the rooms of the Earth Tree. So he is an important figure who rivals these other demigods. And as you play the DLC, you will learn a little bit about why he wasn't featured in the Legends of the Earth Tree, the lands between. You will realize why he exists in this shadow, this land of shadow. I'm not 100% sure on this, but I'm guessing the land of shadow, it's like a lost time in history of the lands between. Because he does have some connection to the lands between itself. Switching gears for a second, one of the big new points I think of Elden Ring was that the scenario was written by George R.R. Martin. Did he have any kind of role in the planning of the Shadow of the Earth Tree? And if so, just out of curiosity, have you talked to him since the game has come out? And has he had any kind of reaction to the outstanding success of the game? So the way George Martin's story has been incorporated is the same as it was with the base game with Elden Ring. And to avoid misunderstanding there, we just want to point out that he hasn't written anything exclusively and new for the sake of this DLC. Okay, that's good to know. But it would still be fair to say that he and his mythos that he created for us are involved in the creation of the Shadow of the Earth Tree in the same way. And the reason for that is that in making the base game and making Elden Ring, we took from that mythos, I don't know. But we only took one part of it. We took from a part that created the story of Elden Ring and created the world that we wanted to envision. And the Shadow of the Earth Tree is yet another part of that original myth that he wrote, and that has inspired us to create the story of this DLC. As for your second question, Mr. Martin and I have at least exchanged emails since the release of Elden Ring. Bro, Martin can even take the time to like go on a phone call. Jesus, man. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to meet and speak in person. It's something I've wanted to do since the release and talk to him again and share in our joy for the game, hopefully. But unfortunately, he's just been so busy that we haven't had a chance yet. But I'll keep looking for an opportunity. So our dear Martin is lost in making Game of Thrones, I guess. I hope. It's been 2 years now since Elden Ring has launched, and much of the hardcore audience have already found the best gear. They fought the hardest bosses, and they are such high levels that I imagine it must be difficult to come up with content that can provide a challenge for those hardcore fans without making it too hard for some of the more casual Elden Ring players. So with all that said, how do you approach difficulty with a DLC such as this? Our general approach to difficulty has of course not changed to Elden Ring. We want to create a challenging experience that tests the players and that gives them a feeling of satisfaction and accomplishment when they get through these struggles. However, we do want to stress that there's still a freedom of approach and a breadth of strategy to these encounters, and that means both how you approach them and if you want to face these challenges or come back to them later and circumvent them and find another way around and come back when you're ready. The same philosophy is taken in Shadow of the Erdtree, and again, to our more hardcore players, they will find optimal bosses who have been tuned in similar ways to the likes of Malenia, who I'm sure you remember from the base game, who are not crucial. So I'm guessing we're gonna have like optional bosses, of course, so that's a given. Having an optional boss with the same difficulty as Malenia, that's not bad, because that means they keep the difficulty for the main story on a base level for the DLC, where it's not gonna tilt the fuck out of casual players. But we're still gonna have the challenges if we want to take them on. That's really good, and I think that's a good decision. Oh god, Miyazaki. Yeah, you might remember her. They're not crucial to the completion of the DLC, but they are an optional extra to help challenge for those who are so inclined. That said, there may not be another boss on the exact the same level as Malenia, but we feel like this is somewhere that we've paid close attention to. This level of challenge and offering the same level of freedom. And we hope that players are able to blossom in the Land of Shadow in the same way that they were in the lands between. Actually, I want to redress that. It's not the fact that it's only a lesser level to Malenia, but we have prepared bosses on that with the similar mindset within the DLC area, ones that will challenge the player and hopefully be as memorable as Malenia was. That's good, because a boss doesn't need to be hard, it needs to be good. You know, Malenia wasn't, of course it was a hard boss, but I think the biggest part on the difficulty of Malenia was the water flow dance, because the move itself is not an easy move to dodge. But besides that, I think the fight is just a mechanical fight that you can get through with the right amount of knowledge and with patience. But it's not necessarily that super tough boss that you're gonna tilt the shit out of, that's gonna tilt the shit out of you, even though it still presents a big challenge. So yeah, I think that's a good thing. If they have good bosses that present good mechanics and have good movement and have good moves, I think they can definitely stand to the level of difficulty as Malenia. But at the same time, they don't have to be impossible, you know? Final question on the topic of Shadow of the Erdtree, but do you envision this as the end of Elden Ring's story? Or is there room for either more DLC or Elden Ring 2 down the line? We don't want to say this is the end of the Elden Ring saga for now. That's awesome. I think we said a similar thing at the end of Dark Souls 3. We didn't want to flatten those possibilities or put a pin in them just at a time. And it's a similar story with Elden Ring. We don't want to discourage the possibilities for that. There might be more ideas in the future. We don't have any current plans to make a second DLC or a sequel, but we definitely don't want to snuff out that possibility. We think that there could well be something in the future. And lastly, the state of the game industry right now is pretty rough. There's a lot of layoffs, studio closures. The PS5 apparently is already in the later stages of its life cycle. Really? Has the landscape of the industry changed your outlook at all on From Software's future? So, yes, I'm aware of the situation in the game industry it's going through right now. It's quite harrowing. I think in terms of speaking to all those things that are happening, like layoffs and closures at other studios, I think it's difficult for me to understand the exact circumstances there. I won't speak to those in specific. Just speaking on behalf of From Software, I think we're very blessed in the way that we have a lot of keen and upcoming developers who've grown and they have developed within the studio and they've reached these director positions where they're able to direct projects such as the recent Armored Core 6. We have several of these up-and-coming directors who were able to delegate these projects to, and were able to have multiple projects on the go at once. What I foresee in this climate, at least for us, is a From Software where games can be directed by others, not only myself. I think in the face of that struggle and the place where the game industry is right now, I do see this as a time for us to continue to grow and continue to cultivate this talent and continue to release these games for as long as we can. So this is good news. This just means that From Software is going strong and they have other good directors, at least from Miyazaki's perspective. It would be a shame to lose Miyazaki, but I don't think he's going anywhere for now. I think he's going to stay at From Software and keep developing awesome games. But it's also good to hear that they have other people who are competent and he thinks that could also deliver on good projects on the same level as Armored Core, as Elden Ring, Dark Souls, and so on and so on. It's also really interesting when he talks about the red guy, because he says that he has a where is it? Yeah, exactly. The man in red, which is Mesmer. It's really interesting that he talks about Mesmer here, because he tells us that it's not that he got shunned from the story from the Lands Between, but he's a figure that holds immense power to the level of the demigods, such as Radahn, such as Malenia, such as Godric, and the other Elden Lords as Mog, and so on and so on. So this is really interesting. So he's definitely a very important figure. And he does mention during the trailer, Mesmer, I mean, he talks a lot about the mother, you know. And I've been wondering if the mom is Marika, but I don't think so. But maybe it could be, because the way he speaks, maybe Mesmer got shunned away. He did something, or I don't know. He probably did something that got him sent into these lands of shadow, you know. And yeah, we're gonna have to wait and see. Maybe Marika herself like shunned him away to the land of shadow, but he definitely had. Maybe he was trying to meddle with powers that he wasn't supposed to, because we see he has those kind of shadow powers besides the fire. Whenever he casts something, there's always a shadow before it. Mesmer seems like a pretty interesting character, and I am really curious about him. And one thing that I was wondering is he has the snake too in the back. And the only boss that we see that has a snake in Elden Ring is Ricard. And Ricard, well, the snake ate him. He ate the snake and the snake ate him. He became the snake. So maybe there could be some connection here too. I don't know, but maybe this is just a stretch. This is definitely some interesting news. I'm really excited about this. So let's wait and see. It's only 4 months away. Soon we're gonna be having ourselves some really nice Shadow of the Earth 3. If you did like, don't forget to like this video, leave a subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you in the next one.